Have you ever judged someone based on appearances, only to later discover just how wrong you were? Sometimes, the truth behind someone's life can surprise us in ways we never imagined. We all have those moments when we quickly judge a person based on how they look, what they're wearing, or the circumstances they seem to be in. We make assumptions, some harmless, others not so much, about their lives, their abilities, or their worth. But what happens when those snap judgments come back to haunt us? When a person who seems to be struggling turns out to be someone completely different than we expected. In today's story, we'll uncover how one man's snap judgment led to a moment he'll never forget. When he refused to sell his car to a struggling single mom, he thought he was protecting his own interests. But little did he know, she had a life-altering surprise waiting for him. Mark, a man who prided himself on being a savvy businessman, thought he was making a smart move by refusing to sell his prized vintage car to Lisa, a woman he assumed couldn't afford it. But Lisa's life was not what it seemed on the surface, and the twist that would unfold would be enough to make anyone rethink their assumptions. We've all been there, quick to make decisions based on what's on the surface. But what if every person you meet holds a story that could change your perspective forever? It's easy to fall into the trap of judging others before we truly know them, to let our own biases shape how we view the people around us. But what if we took a step back and considered that everyone has a deeper, more complex story than what's immediately visible? Sometimes, the lessons we need to learn come from the most unexpected sources. Meet Mark, a car enthusiast and a shrewd businessman. For him, every deal was about maximizing profit. On the other hand, there's Lisa, a single mom juggling work, childcare, and an urgent need for a reliable car to support her family. Mark had always been passionate about cars, not just as a hobby, but as a way of life. He had spent years collecting vintage models, restoring them to pristine condition, and flipping them for profit. Every car he sold was a carefully calculated transaction, driven by his need to get the most out of every deal. His world was all about numbers, margins, and making sure he didn't take a hit financially. Lisa, on the other hand, wasn't focused on vintage cars or luxury. She was a single mother, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Her car had recently broken down, and with 2 kids to look after, she desperately needed a reliable vehicle to get to work, pick up groceries, and take her children to school. She didn't have much money to spend, but she knew she had to do whatever it took to secure something that would help her survive this challenging chapter of her life. Mark had just listed his beloved vintage car for sale, setting a price he believed only serious buyers could afford. One sunny afternoon, Lisa arrived at his lot, hopeful and determined, clutching her modest savings. It was a typical sunny afternoon when Lisa drove up to Mark's lot, clutching the small amount of money she had managed to save up. She had seen the ad for the vintage car, and although she knew it was probably out of her budget, she had to try. Her old car had given out on her for the last time, and the price of repairs was more than she could afford. She needed something reliable, and this car, though a bit of a splurge, seemed perfect. Mark, on the other hand, had just listed the car for a price that reflected its pristine condition, knowing that only a serious buyer would be able to meet the cost. He didn't anticipate someone like Lisa showing up. She appeared to be the type of person who couldn't afford such a luxury, and Mark's skepticism grew as soon as he saw her. As Lisa explained her situation, Mark couldn't help but see her as a risk. He wasn't willing to lower the price or take a chance on someone who seemed like they couldn't afford the upkeep of such a car. Lisa approached Mark with a kind but cautious demeanor, explaining her need for a car and her tight budget. She shared her story of being a single mother, struggling to make ends meet, and needing something dependable to help her take care of her family. She admitted that she didn't have enough to meet his asking price, but she was hopeful that he might consider working with her. Mark, however, wasn't moved. To him, Lisa didn't seem like someone who could afford the car, especially with its high maintenance costs. He had no interest in selling to someone who might not be able to keep up with payments or care for such a valuable asset. As he listened to her, all he could think about was how risky the deal seemed. He didn't want to lower the price. He wasn't in the business of charity. And so, with a dismissive tone, he refused to make a deal, sending Lisa away empty-handed. Instead of pleading further, Lisa walked away with her head held high. She decided to explore other options, But deep down, she couldn't shake her connection to that car. It symbolized a fresh start for her and her son. Lisa didn't let Mark's rejection break her spirit. As she walked away from the lot that day, she felt a mix of disappointment and resolve. She wasn't going to let one man's decision define her future. The car was more than just a means of transportation. It represented a new beginning, an opportunity to start fresh and move forward in life. The old sedan she'd been driving was barely holding together, and every day was a gamble on whether it would get her to work, pick up her son from school, or make it to the grocery store. But the car Mark was selling felt different. It was a symbol of stability and possibility. With no intention of giving up, Lisa started researching other cars online, calling around to dealerships, and visiting used car lots. But as she did, she realized that most cars in her price range were either too old, in poor condition, or didn't fit her needs. Nothing felt quite right. Instead of folding under pressure, Lisa focused on the one thing she knew she could control: her determination. She began to network with other single parents in her community, hoping someone might know of an affordable car that would work for her family. She shared her story and expressed her need to find something reliable. Even though she was a stranger to most of these people, the bond she formed with her community helped lift her spirits. They believed in her resilience, and she knew that this car, the one she had her eye on, was still out there. Meanwhile, Mark began to second-guess his decision as the car remained unsold. His refusal to budge on the price started to feel less like business acumen and more like stubbornness. As the days turned into weeks, Mark's vintage car sat in the same spot on his lot, untouched. He hadn't received a single inquiry that was serious enough to consider. At first, he was unfazed. The price he'd set for the car was non-negotiable, and he was confident that only the right buyer would be willing to pay what it was worth. But with every passing day, his confidence started to erode. The car that had once felt like a solid investment now seemed like a burden, a reminder of his inflexibility. He began to think about Lisa more often. What if she had really been in a tough situation? Could she have scraped together enough money to at least meet him halfway on the price? Mark's inner dialogue began to shift from the certainty that his decision was right to a growing suspicion that maybe he had been too quick to judge her. However, his pride held him back. He still refused to entertain the idea of lowering the price. The thought of backing down, of admitting he had made a mistake, was too much for him. He told himself that he'd rather keep the car and wait for the right buyer, someone who truly appreciated its value, than let it go for less than he deemed appropriate. But deep down, he could feel the nagging sensation that perhaps he'd let an opportunity slip away. Lisa took to social media, sharing her story with her followers. Her post gained traction, with people rallying behind her determination. On the other side, Mark couldn't ignore the growing guilt that maybe, just maybe, he'd underestimated her. As weeks passed, Lisa's persistence grew. She wasn't going to let this setback define her. One evening, while lying in bed and scrolling through her social media feed, she had an idea. What if she could get people to help her? What if her story resonated with others? She decided to take a chance and post about her journey. Her post, telling the story of her quest to find a reliable car for her family, quickly gained traction. Lisa shared her struggles as a single mother trying to make it all work, the challenges of balancing work and childcare, and her genuine need for that car. She didn't ask for handouts, but she invited people to share their thoughts and offer suggestions. She used her platform to connect with others who might understand her situation, and to her surprise, the post went viral. Within hours, dozens of comments flooded in, many from single parents who offered advice, encouragement, and even some car leads. Some people shared their own experiences of overcoming obstacles to make sure their families had what they needed. Lisa's post sparked a conversation about perseverance, community support, and the realities of being a single parent. Mark, on the other hand, started to feel the weight of his decision more than ever. One evening, as he scrolled through his own social media feed, he stumbled across Lisa's post. Her words were raw and honest, and they hit him harder than he expected. The comments below her post were filled with people who were clearly moved by her determination, and the more Mark read, the more he began to question his earlier judgment. Had he really been that quick to dismiss her? The guilt was becoming harder to ignore. Mark had always prided himself on being a savvy businessman, but now, He wondered if his refusal to even consider Lisa's offer had been a mistake. Maybe it wasn't just about the money. Maybe he had been too quick to judge her, and now the car he'd been holding onto for so long might be slipping through his fingers. As Mark pondered this, Lisa continued to push forward. Her community rallied behind her, and soon enough, she received a call from a dealership offering her a much-needed opportunity. The call, however, came with a bittersweet twist. The car she had hoped for was sold to someone else. Yet, in the midst of this disappointment, something unexpected happened. Mark reached out to her. A few weeks later, Mark received a message that left him stunned. A mutual acquaintance mentioned Lisa in passing, casually dropping the bombshell that she had recently sold her tech startup for millions. She was far from struggling. In fact, she was one of the most inspiring success stories in the area. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Mark's phone buzzed with a message from an old friend, Steve. Mark glanced at the screen, expecting to see an update about a business deal or maybe a new car listing. But what he read left him momentarily speechless. Steve, the local business networker, had casually dropped Lisa's name into the conversation, referring to her as a local legend. Mark paused, furrowing his brows. Lisa? The woman who had come to his lot weeks ago, asking about the car? No, it couldn't be. But then came the bombshell that shook him to his core. Lisa had sold her tech startup for millions. Millions. Mark's mind raced as he processed the information. It wasn't just that she had money. It was that he had completely misjudged her. She wasn't some desperate single mom clinging to a dream she couldn't afford. Far from it. Lisa was a businesswoman, a self-made success who had overcome obstacles to create her own empire. She had been an inspiration to everyone who knew her, and Mark, in his arrogance, had completely overlooked that. His initial rejection of her, his refusal to give her the benefit of the doubt, now seemed embarrassingly short-sighted. Mark had assumed she was struggling based on a few superficial clues. The way she spoke, her humble appearance, and her request for a deal on the car. But Lisa had built a thriving company from the ground up, and now she was reaping the rewards of her hard work. Mark couldn't believe how wrong he had been. Mark was floored. How could he have been so blind? He replayed their conversation in his mind, now seeing her confidence and persistence in a new light. Regret began to gnaw at him. Had he let his prejudice ruin what could have been a meaningful connection? The revelation hit Mark like a ton of bricks. As he sat at his desk, staring at the screen of his phone, he found himself questioning everything. How could he have missed it? How could he have been so quick to judge based on appearances and assumptions? His mind immediately went back to that fateful day when Lisa had walked onto his lot. He could see her clearly now. The way she had held herself, strong, poised, and calm, despite the apparent stress of being a single mother. He had written her off as someone who couldn't afford the car. But in hindsight, her quiet confidence and determination should have been enough for him to realize she wasn't just any buyer. She was a woman with vision and drive, someone who had made her own success and would find a way to achieve her goals. The regret set in. Mark couldn't help but wonder how much he had missed by letting his prejudice dictate his actions. Maybe, just maybe, if he had given her a fair chance, he could have forged a connection with someone who could have opened doors for him, someone whose story could have inspired him. But the weight of his mistake went deeper than just business. Mark realized that in his rejection of Lisa, he had been blind not only to her potential as a client, but to the deeper message about how he treated people in general. His behavior toward her was not just a business misstep. It was a reminder of how easy it was to fall into the trap of bias, of treating people based on assumptions instead of truly understanding their worth. The more Mark reflected, the more embarrassed he felt. He had been so focused on the transaction that he failed to see the bigger picture. Lisa wasn't just another customer. She was a woman with dreams, resilience, and a story that could have changed his own perspective on life and business. But instead, he had chosen to be dismissive. And now, he had lost his chance. Meanwhile, Lisa, now financially secure, decided to look for the perfect car. But this time, she wasn't desperate. She was confident and determined to make the best choice for her family. In contrast to Mark's regret, Lisa had moved on. The sudden revelation that she was now a millionaire didn't change her goals, only empowered her to pursue them with even more determination. Lisa had worked hard for everything she had, and now that her financial situation was secure, she had the luxury of making decisions based on what was best for her family, not out of desperation or need. She wasn't in a rush anymore. She didn't have to settle for a car that didn't meet her needs or her standards. With her newfound wealth, Lisa had the freedom to shop around and find the perfect vehicle for her and her son. Her priorities were clear: reliability, safety, and comfort. The car wasn't just a way to get from point A to point B. It was a reflection of her journey and the success she had earned. Lisa had long since let go of the emotional attachment to the car Mark had been selling. She had used it as a symbol of what she wanted for her family, a new start. But now, she wasn't looking for a handout or a discounted deal. She was looking for something that would serve her long-term goals, and she was willing to invest the right amount of money for it. Interestingly, the more Lisa looked for cars, the more she found herself thinking about Mark and the lot where he had turned her down. In the past, she might have felt hurt or rejected, but now, with her financial independence, she simply saw it as a missed opportunity for him. She had no resentment, only a quiet understanding that sometimes people fail to recognize what's in front of them. Lisa's situation had shifted entirely, but her core values had remained the same. She was still focused on creating a stable, fulfilling life for her son. And whether Mark had realized his mistake or not didn't matter to her. She had bigger dreams to chase now, and they didn't include trying to convince someone to sell her a car. Mark reached out, offering Lisa a significant discount on the car. But when she met him again, her demeanor had changed. She was gracious yet firm, letting him know that she no longer needed his offer. A few days after the revelation, Mark couldn't shake the growing sense of regret that continued to weigh heavily on him. He knew he had misjudged Lisa, and while he couldn't undo his past actions, he still hoped to make amends. He thought of a way to repair his mistake. He would reach out to her and offer the car to her at a significant discount, something to show that he understood her value now. Mark's nerves were on edge as he called Lisa. He wasn't sure how she would react, but he knew this was his chance to try to correct his wrongs. He left her a message, expressing his regret and offering her the car at a much lower price, hoping to repair some of the damage he had caused. He believed that the gesture, albeit late, would be enough to smooth things over. Lisa agreed to meet him, but when they stood face to face again, Mark was struck by how much she had changed. Gone was the vulnerability and desperation he had perceived before. Lisa now radiated confidence and self-assurance, the kind of confidence that only comes from realizing your own worth. She listened to Mark's offer with a polite smile, but there was no trace of desperation in her eyes. "Thank you for the offer, Mark, but I'm no longer in need of the car," Lisa said, her tone both gracious and firm. "I've already found the perfect one for my family." Mark's face fell as he realized that his offer, however well-intentioned, was now irrelevant. Lisa's calm demeanor and firm refusal made it clear. She no longer needed him or his car. The irony wasn't lost on him. It wasn't just about the sale. It was about the opportunity to learn from someone he had once underestimated. Mark was left standing there, embarrassed but also enlightened. Lisa's decision to walk away with grace was a reflection of her growth, and it was clear that her journey was not one that required validation from anyone, least of all him. She was no longer the person he had judged her to be. She was a woman of strength, having found her own path without relying on others' perceptions. For Mark, this wasn't just about a lost sale. It was about a lost opportunity to connect with someone remarkable. He realized that his actions had consequences, and he vowed never to make the same mistake again. As Mark left the lot that day, he was struck by the depth of his realization. It wasn't just the sale he had lost. It was the potential for a connection, for a lesson that had passed him by. Lisa had offered him something far more valuable than money, a reminder that assumptions are often the biggest barrier to personal growth. Mark found himself replaying that day over and over in his mind. He thought of all the times he had made snap judgments based on appearances, just as he had done with Lisa. He had let his biases cloud his judgment and had missed the chance to see the bigger picture. In the past, his quick decision-making had been about closing deals and making money, but now he understood that the true value in life came from human connections and mutual respect. The hardest part for Mark was accepting the consequences of his actions. Lisa had moved on, and there was nothing he could do to change her decision. But he wasn't angry with her. He was angry with himself. He had missed the opportunity to learn from someone who could have taught him so much about resilience, determination, and success. But Mark's regret was not a source of despair. Instead, it was the catalyst for a change in mindset. He realized that the greatest lesson from this experience wasn't about the car or the sale. It was about understanding the complexity of every individual. He vowed that from now on, he would approach everyone with an open mind, free of judgment, and without assumptions based on outward appearances. He understood now that people are often far more than they seem on the surface. There are hidden stories, strengths, and lessons in every person. And by opening himself up to these possibilities, he could build richer, more meaningful connections in both his personal and professional life. Lisa found a car that was perfect for her family, symbolizing not just mobility but freedom. Her story became an inspiration, proving that resilience and determination could overcome any obstacle. Meanwhile, Lisa continued on her journey, undeterred by the past. She had found the perfect car for her family, one that symbolized more than just practicality. It was a symbol of her hard-earned success. Lisa's new car wasn't just a means of transportation. It was a representation of everything she had worked for and achieved. The car was a reflection of her own journey from struggle to success, from limitations to limitless possibilities. Lisa's story became an inspiration to those who knew her. She had shown that resilience, determination, and belief in oneself could break through any barrier. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone, least of all Mark. She had already proven everything to herself. Her life, her choices, and her future were now firmly in her hands. Lisa's confidence grew, and so did her impact on the people around her. Her story spread, not just in the local community but beyond, inspiring others to chase their dreams and stay true to their paths, no matter the obstacles in their way. Lisa became a living testament to the idea that success comes to those who work tirelessly, stay true to their vision, and refuse to let anyone, or anything, stand in their way. Through her journey, Lisa had not only secured a better future for herself and her son, but had also become a source of inspiration for anyone who doubted their ability to rise above challenges. And in that, she had already won, far beyond the value of any car or business deal. Mark's unsold car became a reminder of his missed opportunity, while Lisa's journey symbolized triumph over judgment and adversity. In the end, their paths crossed for a reason, leaving both with valuable lessons. The story of Mark and Lisa, though centered around a seemingly simple car transaction, carried far deeper implications. Mark's once prized car, which he had held onto with the expectation of a lucrative sale, remained unsold. It became more than just a product. It was a symbol of his short-sightedness, of the opportunity he had lost due to his own bias. The car was no longer just about profit. It represented the lesson he learned the hard way, that people are more than what meets the eye. Meanwhile, Lisa emerged from the situation victorious, not just because she found a new car, but because she had proven something far more significant. That perseverance, self-worth, and resilience are the true markers of success. Her journey was one of empowerment. No longer desperate or relying on others' approval, she found exactly what she needed in her own time, on her own terms. The car she drove was more than a material possession. It was a symbol of her strength, her journey through adversity, and her refusal to settle for less than what she deserved. The paths of these two individuals crossed for a reason, bringing them lessons they would carry with them. For Mark, it was the awakening to a more profound understanding of human potential. For Lisa, it was further affirmation that her worth was never defined by anyone else's assumptions. Their interaction, though brief, left both with valuable takeaways. This story teaches us never to underestimate someone's potential based on appearances. Everyone has a story, and often, it's far richer than we realize. Mark's initial dismissal of Lisa was driven by a common, yet dangerous, tendency to judge based on surface-level observations. It's easy to make assumptions about people, especially when they don't meet our personal criteria for success. But this story shows that appearances are often deceiving. Behind every individual is a rich history, a story of struggle and triumph, of dreams pursued and obstacles overcome. Lisa's outward appearance, perhaps one of modesty and struggle, masked a world of ambition and success. She wasn't a woman looking for handouts, but one building her future with strength and determination. The lesson here is clear. Never underestimate someone's potential based on what you see at first glance. There is often much more beneath the surface. If Mark had been open to seeing Lisa for who she truly was, their interaction might have turned out differently. In life, it's crucial to give people the benefit of the doubt, to look beyond the exterior, and to recognize that everyone carries a story that can teach us something valuable. Next time you meet someone, ask yourself, what might I be missing? Take a moment to look beyond the surface. You never know how it might change your perspective. As you reflect on this story, think about your own life and the people you encounter. How often do you make snap judgments about others? Do you ever assume that someone's worth is defined by their appearance, their job, or their situation? The next time you meet someone, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself what you might be missing in your initial perception. What stories are they carrying? What dreams are they nurturing? There's so much more to every person than meets the eye. By shifting your perspective, you open yourself up to a world of possibilities. You might just learn something remarkable, whether it's a new idea, a valuable connection, or a life lesson you never saw coming. The world is full of hidden gems, and it's up to us to uncover them. Remember, life is full of unexpected turns. Kindness and understanding cost nothing, but can make all the difference. Keep an open heart and an open mind. You might just witness a miracle unfold. At the heart of this story lies a simple yet profound truth. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Sometimes it's not about what we gain, but about what we learn. In a world where judgments are quick and assumptions are easy, kindness and understanding stand as the true game changers. When we open our hearts to people, when we look beyond the surface and see their potential, we not only enrich their lives but also transform our own. So, let's keep our minds open and our hearts kind. You never know. Your next encounter could be the start of a connection that changes everything. Take a step forward with empathy, and you might just witness a miracle unfold.